Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is a Zotac ZBOX Nano CI321. It's a big name for a fairly little computer. You can see that it's small enough to hold in one hand here. And it's a relatively affordable, small, low-power, fanless computer. And what that means is it has a processor that doesn't generate too much heat, and you can use a passive cooling system here. There's no fan inside, nothing that makes noise, unless you put a noisy hard drive or something inside of there. So it sells for about $140 as a bare bones system, or $240 if you buy a version with 2 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, and Windows 8.1 with Bing software. If you get the bare bones version, you need to supply your own memory, your own storage, and your own operating system. But it's worth considering just because you get to go with more than 2 gigs of RAM if you want it, and I think that'll make a pretty big difference. Speaking of big versus little, it's not the smallest little computer that you're going to find. So here we've got an Intel NUC. This is actually from Zoreason. They took Intel's little computer, loaded Linux up on it, and sort of sold it as their own. You can see it is smaller, but it doesn't have quite as many ports. And if you want to go really small, there's the Intel Compute Stick, which is really quite tiny, but at least as of mid-2015 when we're filming this review, these models have Intel Atom Bay Trail processors, not super powerful, and not a lot of ports, and also not fanless. There's a little fan inside the case to keep it cool. So in terms of versatility, you sort of get a lot of options here. Now, it's not exactly a gaming system, but it does offer good enough performance for day-to-day tasks, and it's because of its quiet sound levels, silent sound levels or lack thereof, and because of its size and design, I think it actually makes a nice little home theater PC if you wanted to stick it next to your TV. There's no DVD drive, of course, so you're going to need, if you want to play DVDs or Blu-ray discs, a USB drive. But for everything else, it works pretty well. So we've got a power button here, SD card slot, mic and headphone, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and an infrared receiver. Nothing on the sides, infrared, so if you wanted to use a remote control. Nothing on the sides except for more ventilation. You want to have airflow be able to go through it and the hot air get out, keep it from overheating. On the back, there's a power jack, DisplayPort, and HDMI, so you can connect up to 2 displays, one at resolutions up to 2560 by 1600, the other at up to 1920 by 1200. 2 Ethernet jacks, 2 more USB 3.0 ports, that's a total of 4 on the front and the back, and a USB 2.0 port, and then here we've got an adjustable antenna, which you can unscrew if you want. On the bottom, you can see that there's these little feet that you can actually just unscrew to open up the case. So you don't need a screwdriver in order to put memory storage inside. And I've tested this in a variety of different configurations, including with a hard drive, with an SSD, with 2 gigs of RAM, with 8 gigs of RAM. The one thing I'll say is that, and with Linux and with Windows, one thing I'll say is that 2 gigs of RAM is enough for basic tasks. It doesn't get faster if you put in extra RAM, but it handles, it handles multitasking better. So I'm currently using it with 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 128 gigabyte solid state drive. You can put as much memory and storage in there as you want. It holds up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and there's 2 memory card slots here. So you can use 2 8 gig cards, 2 4 gig cards, 2 gig cards, etc. There's a wireless card in here that has 802.11ac and Bluetooth 4.0 support, and between that and the antenna, reception is pretty good. So let's go ahead and close it up, turn it on, and I'll show you a little bit of how it works. Now, as I said, I have tested it briefly with a couple of different operating systems. So I've tried it with Windows 7, and it comes with a driver disk for Windows 7, and you will probably need to plug in a DVD drive or download some drivers in order to get everything to work properly. Windows 10, not a problem. Didn't need to install any drivers, it just worked out of the box. Same goes for Linux Mint, just worked out of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in a couple of things here. Make sure the antenna is screwed on tight. Alright, so we've got a mouse and a keyboard plugged in, we've got a monitor plugged in. Let's go ahead and load Windows. Again, this is with 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of solid-state storage. Your performance is going to differ depending on the operating system, memory, and storage configurations that you choose. But here we go, we're loading. And we've got Windows up. I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And we'll pan up the camera so you can't see my password. And we're already connected to the internet. I'm just going to wait a second here for any auto start programs to load. And that's good enough. So let's go ahead and load Google Chrome here. And I'll show you a little bit about what you can do. Now there's, it's a full-fledged computer. It can run pretty much any app. It's just going to run some faster or slower than others. But since we do have an internet connection, let's go ahead and load my favorite website. And my second favorite. And let's watch a video.
You know why I brought you here today? Metro gives you unlimited data, talk, and text, taxes, and fees included.
Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is an Android phone, a Google Nexus 5, and it is running a Microsoft application called Cortana.
The forecast for tomorrow shows cloudy skies with a high of 84 and a low of 75.
I probably could have picked a video that has a little bit more action in it than that, but I didn't, so there you go. What else we got?
Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is an Android 4.0 mini PC.
Anyways, so we've got a web browser. You can see that we've got support for all sorts of Windows activities here. We can load the Windows Store. While that's loading, let's bring up weather application. Microsoft Edge web browser. Let's do a little news here maybe. And then of course you can resize and reshape and do all that sort of thing. So in terms of general performance, I've used this to write blog posts, have a dozen browser tabs open using Google Chrome, upload pictures, edit pictures, listen to music. All of those things work great with 8 gigs of RAM. 2 gigs of RAM, a little bit difficult to do. The extra memory really helps with multitasking more than it helps with raw power. When it comes to things like transcoding audio and video files that are really CPU intensive, that's where a faster processor would come in handy. You can definitely do it with this Intel Haswell Celeron Y series processor, but it's going to be faster with some other ones. Let's go ahead and load a couple of different things to show you some other activities that you could do here. Let's try a game. So this is a Windows Store style game, and what's going on here? There we go. And you could probably play this on even a device with a lower power processor, but it does look really nice on this machine. So we've got a little minion rush activity there. Let's go ahead and load a media player. So we already saw some YouTube video, but what if we wanted to treat this as more of a media center for your TV? If you had a big screen display, you could run the Kodi Media Center. And use plugins to watch online video, or in this case, I've got some videos that are streaming from a home network. Let's do a little American Experience from PBS.
Eliminate all federal funding. That very experience is.
Man who hung out in the upper movie theater.
Ed Koch, who was a Democratic Party leader in the Greenwich Village area, was a specific leader of the local forces seeking to clean up the streets.
So that works nicely. For a $130 computer plus storage, memory, and operating system, if you wanted to install Linux, you wouldn't have to pay any money at all for the operating system, and you could use it as a Kodi Media Center. I'm using it with Windows. What about gaming? Well, that depends on the games. You know, we saw the Minion Rush there, but again, you could do that on something with really low power. But let's try Batman Arkham Asylum. Now, this is probably going to take a little bit longer to load. And what I noticed with this game is if you try to run it at full HD 1920 by 1080 pixel resolution with the very high graphics settings optimized, are you even loading? I think you're loading. just double click it again just to be sure, then it's almost unplayable at those settings. But if you try it at 1280 by 720 and high settings, it does work pretty well. I forget what the last thing I tried was. Yeah, let's switch down to 1280 by 720. And detail level, let's go with high instead of very high. So while I wouldn't recommend anybody buy this machine specifically for gaming, if you bought it as a general purpose computer or as a media center and you wanted to play some games, you could definitely do that. Now, I have a habit of forgetting the control scheme for this game, so I'm not going to play very long because you would just watch me fail miserably, but I just wanted to show you a little bit.
Darn elevator.
Walking around. Oh, and of course there's a cut screen right here.
Ow. What the hell happened?
How'd you like that, T-Man? No way you're following us now. The trap's down there till me and Mr. J are ready for you.
Gordon was taken up to the surface in the elevator. If I want to follow him, I'll need to do this the old-fashioned way.
Alright, so I didn't really want to play this so much as just show you everything looks pretty good. Again, if you try this at the higher level graphics settings, it can be pretty difficult, but it's definitely playable here at the lower resolution. Especially if you're not standing awkwardly behind a camera. So anyway, so that's a quick look at some of the things that you can do here with the Zotac ZBOX CI321 Nano. The computer, when you're running it for a while and you just do a bunch of activities like we did, it does get pretty warm to the touch at the top there. You can find more details at Liliputing.com in terms of performance, but I haven't really noticed it throttling too much. I'm going to go ahead and real quick here and load the Specky application, and we can get a look at the heat levels currently after just running through these quick tests. You can see that the processor itself is only running at 61 degrees Celeron. The motherboard is pretty hot at 102 degrees, but if you were running it on, say, a non-glass table, you might have a little bit more airflow underneath. In this particular case, I wouldn't recommend putting something right on top of this machine, but if you're going to sort of run it next to your TV or in a situation sort of like I've got it set up here in front of the TV, I think it's going to be fine for a media center. You could use it in your office. You could use it for a lot of different things. There are definitely more powerful computers on the market. There are definitely smaller computers on the market. There are cheaper computers on the market and more expensive ones. But in terms of price, performance, size, power consumption, I think this is a pretty interesting option. Zotac does have a couple of others, including models with Bay Trail processors. There's a new version that's coming out soon with a Core M processor with a Broadwell. That one will probably have better graphics, and I'll be interested to see how the CPU performance compares. But for $140 and up, I think the ZBOX Nano CI320 is definitely worth considering, depending on what you're expecting to be able to get out of this small, fanless mini computer. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and a quick look at Zotac's CI320 Nano ZBOX Mini PC.